In today's Retro Tech Repair, we're going to be repairing this CGL Galaxy Twinvader that I bought spares or repair on eBay. Alright, so today we're going to be looking at a Galaxy Twinvader. Again, a bit of an unusual name from CGL. I think Galaxy Invader, they also made a smaller handheld rather than tabletop like this. Not quite sure where the name Twinvader came from. But CGL is the company that bought you Donkey Angler, so who knows. But anyway, Galaxy Twinvader, there it is. This particular example I bought used on eBay, spares or repair. As you can see, it's very heavily yellowed and discolored, this white plastic. Looks quite nasty. I don't know how much of that will clean off. We'll take a look at that in a minute, but for now, let's take a look at the eBay listing. So here we have it, CGL Hanzawa Galaxy Twinvader Vintage Tabletop Electronic Game, 1981. Spares or repair. I paid £18 plus £2.95 shipping, so just a little over £20, £21 really, and the description's pretty brief. Works, but buttons do not. So let's take a look. So the seller said it works, but the buttons do not. Let's just try some batteries in here. Looks like it's 4 C cells, fairly standard for these VFD tabletop games. See if it's as the seller described. Power on. Oh yeah. Yeah. Interestingly, fire button seems to work, but the joystick does not work. Reset seems to work. Maybe. Yeah. Reset and fire seems to work. It's really the joystick that doesn't work, actually not the buttons. So not quite as the seller described. I see I can fire, but I can't move left or right, or up and down. I guess it has it up and down as well. So maybe that's the twin, maybe you can move left, right and up and down. But anyway, either way, doesn't seem to work. Still, it was bought as spares or repair. So let's open it up and see. I don't know what could be causing that. Maybe something's been spilt on it. Maybe something else. PCA corrosion, that's another possibility. Could be something simple. Battery compartment's nice and clean, but these plastics are very yellowed. These screws make a kind of reassuring initial click. You can always get a sense for whether something's been opened or not by the sound that the screws make. The screws' heads are not gnarled, and you get this kind of initial, listen in here, initial kind of snap as the screw first turns. So that's a good sign, kind of reassuring when you buy something that looks like nobody's made an attempt to repair. Just gives you a little bit more confidence that you're not going to have to fix somebody else's mistakes too. Alright, pop those to the side and hopefully this will just lift off. Who knows? Okay, that's promising. Yeah, interestingly, most of the things seem to be mounted in the top here. And I see straight away, oh no, I thought I saw straight away that we had a failed connection there, but that in fact isn't the case. There is a hair across there. Not quite sure what would be causing that. I think what I'm going to do is, as I usually do, I'm going to try and get the electronics away from the plastics. It just makes repairing so much easier. So I see the piezo sounder is kind of molded into the plastic there, melted into the plastic. I don't know if I'm going to try and get that out. Maybe I can get that out, maybe that's not so bad, and then just melt it in again. And then I'll just unsolder these. I don't like to solder onto these. I've just found them to be really fragile and hard to solder back onto. Maybe I'm doing something wrong, but I try not to do that. But it is nice to get the electronics away from the plastic, so it just makes repairing so much easier for me. So I think I am just going to try and pop this out if I can. Maybe soldering it in later. There we go. And we'll just melt that in a little bit later on, the same way it was melted before. or maybe pop a bit of hot melt or something over it. Well, it looks like it's got a little bit of glue on the back, so it might be a good way to secure it in future. Yeah, this unusually has a threaded, kind of knurled, threaded piece on it. So I'll try and see if I can undo that. All right, looks like I may have loosened it, because that looks like it's going to come now. You can see that I'm just got a knurled, kind of threaded piece on, just kind of unwinding that with the screwdriver there. Just enough to free that off. And it's loose now. I think we should be able to prise that out. Let's try and prise that out of the way without damaging anything around it. There we go. Okay, so we're just left with these two solder connections now to undo. A blue and a red. I'm assuming the red goes to the positive. I'll double check. Yes, it does. So given that's the case, it should be fairly easy just to pull those apart and remember where they are. So while I'm waiting for my soldering iron to heat up, let's remove the rest of this from the enclosure. Oddly, it doesn't look like there's anything on the up and down contacts here. There is a left and right. I'm not sure whether there is an up and down function or not. And that's most peculiar. I might have to look at the gameplay online. But perhaps there's just some dirt behind these or something. Connections on the face of it look to be good. Let's see if we can get this display out and have a look at what's going on with the game itself. Okay, so there are a couple more screws buried in here that I hadn't seen. That's one, and the other, and then I think that will be that. Good. That can just lift away. We'll set the screen aside for a minute, and we'll just pop in with a soldering iron and remove these two remaining wires, and then we should be free of the plastics. Okay, good. So here's our electronics assembly. It's a bit grimy. I say we have, I don't think anybody's been in here before, but we have contacts here, but not contacts for the up and down, although they are there on the printed circuit assembly, so that's interesting. I see there is a pad under each one. I don't see any evidence of there being any pads there previously. There's no mark. This has left a little mark there. Nor do I see this being particularly corroded or the carbon pill being worn away or anything like that, so I don't really see why that wouldn't have worked, but anyway, it didn't. So we'll pop those aside, then we don't lose them, and then we'll get this hooked up to a bench power supply in a minute and try a little bit more to see if we can get it to work and see what's going on with it. Let's get the rest of the pieces out of here. Looks like we have a Fresnel lens, which is behind the main screen there. It looks like the screen is kind of heat staked, or it's probably a heat stake, into the main enclosure. So I can't remove that for polishing as I would like to do. We'll have to polish that in situ. And then we have our buttons here and our bezel for the power switch. Try and keep those together so I don't lose them. So I'm going to turn our attention now to this plastic enclosure. I'll come back to the electronics, but it's a sunny day and I'm going to try something which I haven't done ever before, which is, well, people call it retro bright. I'm not sure about that because what I'm going to use is basically hair bleach. If my wife or myself, I don't have any hair, but if my wife were to go to the hairdressers and ask for her hair retro brighting, I'm not sure they'd really know what to do, but if they said bleaching, they would. So we'll see if we can bleach this yellow back to something that looks a bit more like white. So the first thing I'm going to do though is get it cleaned up. I'm going to try and bleach this enclosure with a hair brightener, pop it out in the sun, see if we can get this awful yellowed. I mean, you can't really see it as much on the camera, perhaps there, as it is in real life. In real life, it really is truly horrendously yellowed. Yeah, so hopefully that will get it cleaned up and brightened up. I don't know, I've never done anything like this before. So it's an interesting experiment. I'd really like to be able to remove these decals, but I know that if I do, I'll never get them back as neatly as they are. So we're just going to take our chances with this. You know, if I end up bleaching those, well, that's unfortunate. But it's all part of the learning process, really. So this is the brightener I have chosen to use. It's not an endorsement. It just happened to be what was cheap on Amazon. I think had the 12% concentration, which I think is good. I don't know, to be honest, but this is the one that we have. This is the one we're going to use. Give it a shake. I don't know if that's necessary or not, but we'll do it anyway. An old towel, because I expect that's going to become heavily discoloured, and we'll squirt some of that in. And we're going to brush it on. Wish me luck, because it's the first time I've done this. Oh, you know what I'm going to do? Maybe if I mask off this, maybe I should mask this off really quickly, just in case we lose that. Let me see. And I'm just going to put a piece of masking tape on here, and then I'm going to cut around it with a kind of craft knife thing here. Fortunately, it does kind of sit in the groove. There's a little bit of a groove in the plastic. It does tend to want to sit in there, so hopefully this will come out fairly cleanly around our label. I think that's going to come away. All right, good. So hopefully that's that label protected. I can't promise, I don't know. Certainly it's more protected than it would have been if I hadn't done that. So let's slap some of this stuff on. I have no experience with this, as I say. I don't know how much is needed. I don't know if it's going to work. It's just what I'm doing. So I masked off all of the non-white portions. Whether that's going to be enough to protect them or not, I don't know, but at least I did it. This area seems to be the worst afflicted via the kind of top edge here, so try and get as much on there as I can. Well, I think that's about as much as I'm going to be able to reasonably get on here. It's dripping off literally on my hands. I think it's time that we got some cling film on this. So a massive word of caution there, if you're going to use hydrogen peroxide, wear gloves. This isn't on my skin, this is my skin. It's actually killed the cells and turned the skin white. So if you are going to do this, please, please, please wear gloves. Alright, so my hands are much better and we're back with our Galaxy Twinvader. Just a reminder there, you must wear gloves, you're going to do something like that. And again, don't take anything that I do as advice or anything like that. I'm just an amateur at this, sharing my experiences with you, and that's an experience that I'm not going to forget in a hurry. But it took about 2 hours before my fingers returned to something like normal. Anyway, here we are with our Galaxy Twinvader. I have it out of the plastics enclosure now. It's connected up to a bench power supply, which is just off camera at 6 volts, and it's drawing about 0.2 of an amp currently, and it seems to be working fine. But it does still have this problem with the key pan. So if I press start now, or if I start it now, okay, and it will move to the right under some extreme pressure, to the left under a lot more pressure, but under a kind of casual touch, it just doesn't move. It really needs you to kind of press hard on it. So I think what I'm going to do really is I'm just going to clean these pads up here and see if the problem improves. So let me go ahead and do that. So I'm going to take our fiberglass brush here. Well, let me switch it off. Take our fiberglass brush here, and we're just going to rub over each of these contact pads and get those kind of cleaned off. Not too hard, just to get any obvious corrosion off those. And in fact that has cleaned up quite nicely. I'll lift that up to the camera so hopefully you can see it. Compared to the others, that is now quite shiny, whereas the others are a little bit dull. It doesn't seem to want to focus, but you can see that one that I've cleaned now is quite shiny, but the others are quite dull. So we'll go ahead and do the rest of them. May as well disconnect the power supply for the time being. These aren't actually used in the game, so I don't really know why I'm doing those, but we'll do them anyway. Just give those a quick go. And then with a little bit more attention on these here. Good. While we're in here, well, let's do the other buttons that do seem to work. They look similarly corroded actually. I wonder if somebody has spilled something on this or something that's caused that to happen, or whether it's just been in a damp location or got a bit of moisture in there. So a little bit of something over the tracks there. It looks like maybe something was written on it at some stage at the factory, but I'm going to clean that off too. And the idea is not to get through to the copper. I don't want to go through the plating here. I just want to give these a nice gentle clean. And then I see there's still a lot of flux residue from some soldering that's gone on around here, but I'm going to get some IPA and clean off the board also. So I'll probably go at that as well whilst I'm in there. So I guess we'll get that cleaned up around there. I don't like to see that on a board. I know flux isn't necessarily corrosive, there are no wash fluxes, but whether that is the case here or not, I don't know. Certainly won't hurt to clean that up. Similarly around these solder joints here. And these solder joints here too. And then we'll go and we'll clean the pads off. Okay, good. And so now I'm going to go and I'm going to clean these little pads. Now, I was a little nervous about doing this in the past because I was worried that I would erase or remove the carbon from these carbon pills. Yeah, but so far I haven't. So hopefully this time I won't either. It does seem a little kind of thin compared to some of the others. It looks like it's a kind of carbon print on the button as opposed to a kind of carbon pill. I don't know if you can see that. Yeah, got most of the, try and get that to focus. You look at most of the games that I have looked at, it's actually a little piece of carbon that's in there, whereas here it looks to be more like some carbon paint that's been applied to the button. So whether or not that has had a bearing, I don't know. But I think it's probably still going to work. If not, we'll maybe get a carbon pill from another game and see if we can get that to fit. And then of course I need the other button, which is here. I thought for 1 minute I had lost that. There seems to be a lot more coming off this one. As I say, I'm kind of a little nervous about going in these with IPA in case I remove the carbon from them, which of course would render them close to useless. Well, pretty much useless. So far I haven't, but I do see there that is definitely a paint rather than being kind of an actual piece of carbon. Alright, I'll come in here and we'll clean off these two. Hopefully these are a little bit more resilient, although they do seem to be of the same construction. And pop them back on the board like so. No, not like so, like so. Alright. And then we'll hook it back up to our bench power supply. Again, the negative to the blue, the positive to the red, just as it was in our battery compartment. There's nothing special about this supply, I'm just avoiding using batteries. And we'll try our new cleaned up contacts with our new cleaned up carbon pills. Make sure I get this the right way around. I'm pretty sure that's it. Yes, it seems to be these sitting here like so. Let's see if the situation improved. Hopefully it did. If it did not, then we'll need to think again, obviously. Well, for a moment there, I thought something had gone horribly wrong, but it's just a loose connection here. Thank goodness. Oh, it died already. Anyway, good news. Just a normal key press now seems to be adequate. Alright, well, so it seems to be fine, really. Pretty easy fix that. Just the carbon pills needed cleaning up there. So I really wanted to show you more of the retro brighting process, but unfortunately I didn't have the camera running, so I'm going to have to describe it instead. After I'd applied the peroxide cream, I wrapped the Twinvader in cling film and then left it out on the steps of my apartment for about 4 hours. After that, I brought it back in, applied some more of the peroxide cream, and then the following day set it out in the daylight for about 8 hours. After that, I removed it from the cling film, washed it off under the tap, and we'll rejoin the video at about that stage. So we have our Galaxy Twinvader now, fresh from its retro brighting experience, and I'm very pleased with the way that this has turned out. All of the yellowing has gone, and it's strange because you can actually see the yellowing coming out and into the hydrogen peroxide gel, but then when I washed it off, it came out like this. A couple of things that I would change. Obviously the labels and things survived just fine, although the masking really didn't work very well. The labels still survived just fine. Inside, I should have removed the battery terminals. I'm sure those of you who've done this before will be kind of screaming at me to do that. Should have returned that. Before you put a heavy oxidizer on something and you then rinse it with water, the best thing to do is to remove those things. So they did corrode a bit and I had to clean them up. But overall, I'm very, very happy with this. So if you watch the channel regularly, you'll know that really I repair things, I don't restore them. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. That's kind of my motto. But I am thinking, because this turned out so well, that I might consider recapping this board. Now, when I showed you this board before, you can see that it's got all of the component values marked on. And I don't think I showed you the back of the board, which has the microprocessor on it. Now, you know, you can pause it and take a look if you like, if you need some more details on this. But interestingly, a lot of the games that I've had have the microprocessor mounted under the display. That's not the case here. It's mounted on the back of the board. It only has 3 electrolytic capacitors. Ordinarily, like I say, if it ain't broke, I don't fix it. I don't just routinely recap things unless I'm hunting a fault. But in this case, there's only 3. They're right here, they're labeled. I think I'm going to go ahead and recap this. So as I say, as I lift these up, they all are marked on the board with the values. So that's rather nice. I think I'm just going to be able to unsolder them all and just solder the new ones back in. So put the first one in the component tester, the ones removed. It's 56.7 microfarads, I think it's 47 was its rated value, ESR of 0.71 and a V-loss of 1.7. So let's see if the new one fares any better than that. So this was the 47 microfarad capacitor, so that's this one. So we'll just remind ourselves of those numbers again. Okay, so 0.74 ESR and 1.7% loss. And we'll try this one. An ESR of 1 or 1.8% loss. So to me, that looks worse than the one that's just come out. But, you know, what would I know? So really, do we make it any better by recapping? If you've got any thoughts, please leave your comments in the comments section. I've taken these old ones out. I'm going to put the new ones in. But did we actually make this any better by recapping it? All right, let's see if we can remember how this thing went back together. So as I reassemble the game, I'd just like to offer a sincere apology to each of my loyal subscribers. The past few weeks have been particularly busy for me, and I haven't had as much time to devote to the channel as I would have liked. But I have enjoyed reading and responding to all of your comments. So if you have any feedback on today's video, good or bad, please leave a comment in the comments section. And if you're enjoying today's video, please consider hitting subscribe. In the meantime, let's return to the repair. Okay, so we now have our fully working Galaxy Invader, and the angles are just a little bit awkward here for me to show it to you, so I apologise for my clumsy gameplay. We'll turn it on, we'll start it hopefully at level 1. Yeah, because it's actually quite hard to play And I'm going to try and play it through the camera here, which obviously doesn't go very well. And I think what you can see is the invader kind of comes down. Once they're heading down, you can't shoot them. You can only kind of shoot them when they're in formation. So you really have to kind of go like this and then move out of the way when they come down and hide behind those two things. Those two things at the bottom don't seem to disappear. You just need to hide behind it whenever. So fortunately you don't have to watch my incompetent game playing for too much longer because this game has a demo mode. So let's take a look at that. So as our Galaxy Invader does its thing, I'd just like to thank you for sticking with the video this far for what was quite a simple repair. I hope that you've enjoyed the video, and as always, thank you so much for watching Retro Tech Repair. Hi, what's inside here? That could be a problem. Just the joystick works as it should. Great. Select, I don't know if that's skill level or number of lives around. I have it in a couple of places and then it stops. Grandstand scramble, wonderful, looking forward to fixing that.